Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here.
We were asked to talk about this evening. We were asked to talk about teaching, and we have chosen the title of our lecture, "Teaching Together," because it reflects the way we work, we practice architecture, and at the same time, by extension, how we teach. So this evening we would like to speak about the parallel lives that two architects and a team of architects can lead, both as practicing architects and as teachers.
That microphone was really low too, huh? Try again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it's okay?
Okay, for us, practicing architecture as well as teaching architecture is an open, collaborative process. We started together as two persons, so the architecture or the project were always in the center of a conversation between the two of us. We are not very specialized people, and we like to both talk and have ideas and design things. So from the beginning, there was a dialogue on the same eye level.
It's the opposite of the idea that there's one genius from whose brain or heart or whatever all the ideas flow out into reality, huh? And make the world happier. So we are not like that, and we are also not interested in that idea of the lone genius, but we like to talk, huh? And we like to put the project, as Oliver said, between us. What happens when you put the project between you, in the space between you? First of all, you have it out of your heart. It doesn't oppress you. You don't have the constant anxiety of being the sole responsible for the project. All that fear and nightmarish angst that you experience in studio, I'm sure you do, no? It's kind of pushed out of your individuality. And it's somewhere between us. And if there are more people, if we include you, it's maybe somewhere here.
And in this open, it's an open thing, no? The way the office grew, the way we had more collaborators, we included them in the discussion. So even though Thomas and I have the full financial responsibility of the office, anybody from the intern to the architects being with us for 5 years can say whatever they think to each of the projects, to each of the questions. And this open dialogue we tried to introduce from the beginning in the studios we were teaching. We see our studios as open vessels where every question, every comment from students, from guests, from people just walking in can be raised. And while doing so, we're not only teaching together, but we're also learning together.
And we want to share, we want to rush through a few projects that we did with you. And this is not supposed to be a typical architect's lecture where you explain your projects and show how great they are. Of course, we think we love them. But we want to pinpoint some of the things we learned on the way, some of the ideas we discovered, some of the interests that we're developing. And when in the second part of the lecture we will go into teaching, we will try to make that link between the things we discovered and the method of teaching, the way we are teaching.
Let's go. Language of form. For us, architecture is a language of form. So what does that mean? Thomas, this is the Palazzo Borromeo by Piero Ligorio in Rome. 1561 it was built. We discovered this facade while we were designing a big office competition for a big office building in Zurich. And what we loved about it is the way this facade is organized. It's dividing with this central line, dividing the facades in two symmetric halves. with this loggia on top and the portal below, it opens up a kind of cross figure that has a full control of the surface of this facade. It's very monumental. At the same time, it can accommodate irregular window positions. And we thought the new office building could be like that. But then
we were broke. We had no money. Huh? So we had no money to continue the competition. And the phone rang. And there was a person, a former client of our former boss, and said, can't you do a small competition for me? It's for a small house with 5 apartments.
At the time it was 3.
Oh, only 3 at the beginning. So we dropped the competition and we started that. We dropped the big competition, we started the small competition. And suddenly these ideas, they jumped from one project to the other. So this little house in a suburb of Basel, 2 stories plus a roof story, was just too small to be have a communal monumental expression, but it's still a house with more than 1 apartment. It's not a single family house. So how do you deal with this? How do you represent something that's more than just a single family, but it's not big enough to have 100 windows?
So we used the composition of the cross. We kind of altered it. You know, you can see that there's a new gravity line up here. There's a piano nobile of the building. And like in the manner of Michelangelo, we hung a smaller window below the big one so that this creates one figure. You know, the line of the cross is still there. And we thought it's powerful enough to include irregularities like this or these or these. And when we say architecture is a language of form, I think you can see the transformation. No, we're trying to say the same thing as Piroligorio, but maybe we added a sub-clause, or maybe we were also mumbling a bit. It's not quite clear, no? But the origin, the grammar is the same. However, 2020, we cannot build like Piroligorio, can we?
So what we did, this is a kind of direct comparison between a window designed by Michelangelo that has this hanging figure that Oliver just talked about, so that it's a frame that has the center of gravity in the upper area, and it's almost hanging rather than standing. But what we want to tell you is, on the right side, we see the window, the constructive detail drawing of the window that we just have shown in the model, and we want to show you the difference and the act of transformation. Today, as you know, we are not building with stone, we're not building massive buildings, but our buildings today are thin and are made of a series of layers, of constructive layers, that are constructive insulation and the outer shell. So suddenly, there's this act of transformation where something that is massive will be translated in something that is thin. So what we did is, instead of using stone like Michelangelo, we used folded metal that is painted. Like in the Japanese art of origami, where you fold sheets of paper and turn the 2-dimensional sheets into something 3-dimensional. We try to create a kind of plasticity and give a new voice to this, to these old themes.
This approach of thinking of architecture as a language of form excludes completely the idea of architecture coming as a kind of instant image, no? That there is practices that would take an image of a building, right? Very famous one taught in Switzerland and now here back in Prague, Miroslav Schick, he would work with a complete image, right? But to us this feels like a shortcut. We need an act of transformation, and also we like to disassemble all the words that we use for our language and put them back together to kind of speak with our own voice.
And another possibility of doing architecture is to start from the constructive materiality of architecture, to use a constructive system. But this is also something we are not interested in. And the reason why is because today the relationship between how a building looks like, the outer shell, and the interior constructive system is completely detached. It has very little to do with one another. We are not building pyramids out of massive stone. We are doing multi-layered buildings where the outer shell that communicates to the eye is really detached from what is inside.
So, even though we love the vestibule of the Laurentian Library by Michelangelo, we are very aware that we cannot build anything like this, and certainly not in the kind of mundane projects or programs that we are building for. So sometimes you need a translation or a translator to help you, and for us, contemporary art is one of the translators. Similar to the Michelangelo piece, where every element kind of stands for itself. In this work by the American artist Richard Orchwager, this kind of funky door with kind of quite strange proportions and texture has an incredible energy next to the super elegant, it's a typographic sign, but it could also be a moustache or something, couldn't it? And so we tried in this is the same house as we've seen on the outside, the house in Binningen. So we tried to work with the windows. They're always the same. They kind of have excessive proportions. There's black columns. There is pieces of wood that mediate between two figures. There's gaps. So that all comes from the idea that elements are singular and in a way of bringing them together.
And this...
We're not going to talk about the cat, are we?
No, we are not going to. Let's just go through it.
Yeah. You can pet it, it will talk to you, and if it likes you, it will open the door. And it keeps your letters as well.
And we saw its friend outside your faculty in snow. There's a cute cat.
Oh, yeah.
on the bench.
With almost all the projects we're dealing, a lot of them are housing, and there's always a big economic question to housing. Either coming from a developer side, but we are mostly building for cooperatives or for developers who look at affordable housing. Zurich, as you know, it's just been voted again as the most expensive city in the world, but it's not, it doesn't have the richest inhabitants. There's lots of people who are not very rich. 30% of the land is owned by co-ops. And there is a number of foundations, but also pension funds who really try to invest in low-cost and affordable housing in order to have the city as a place for everyone to live.
And this is this was a competition under the theme of sufficiency. As you know, sufficiency is a sub-theme of sustainability, where the question is raised: how many resources do you really need? Do you want to maximize the use of resources, or do you want to use only the needed resources for what you want to reach? And it is a building in a newly developed area in a village outside of Zurich. It used to be a commercial industrial area, and this slim building serves as the kind of acoustic buffer for some more expensive buildings behind. So this was an experimental competition.
It was supposed to be the cheapest apartment building in Switzerland. They were specifically looking at 1 to 2 person household apartments with the quite simple idea that you can always rent out small and cheap apartments.
Yeah. And in Switzerland, the wages are very high. So how do you build cheaply in Switzerland? You can't just use cheap materials or hire people and don't pay them. But you can only do it by inventing something, by not building certain elements that are usually built in housing.
In a nutshell, we said, okay, one staircase will save us the most surface for apartments. Balcony access will be the simplest way to access these apartments. This was a depressing scheme, it was like an Ibis hotel with outside circulation. Luckily, the building law was consume a lot of the surface of these balconies. So we realized if we do them every second floor, we don't cast a virtual shadow, we get the balconies for free. And then we have the high-rise just here, and we thought it's so dull. This high-rise is 20 floors high, we are 8 floors high, and we're going to look at this tower all the time. So we step the building back, it opens up towards the high-rise, it opens up towards the sky, a balcony building gets turned into a terrace house, and we have 4 times the same apartments in the section, but you get them like t-shirts in 4 different sizes, small,